What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the podcast. I am outside my normal recording studio today. I'm upstairs in a slightly different environment in my building, just trying to get a little bit of a different surrounding, get the creative juices flowing. I like to break it up a little bit, so I'm not always just working in the same little pod. Depending on what kind of work I'm trying to do, I find it very useful to have different places that kind of inspire different parts of me. So if I'm trying to do like the admin work, I find my home office to be very effective. If I'm trying to write, then I actually find it very useful to get on my laptop and go somewhere completely different where I can be alone. I can kind of talk to myself as I'm writing, and being on my laptop actually is far less distracting than being on my desktop computer. So here we are. I'm recording in, I think this is 720p, so very, very high resolution. Hopefully it's not bothering you guys too much if you're watching this on YouTube. If you're listening on the podcast, then this shouldn't necessarily be a problem for you. But question real quickly, if you're a diehard fan, somebody told me the other day, they're like, hey, I love your content. However, when you say the word pod, it's omega level cringe. And I was just curious, do you guys think the word pod is cringe? I've never thought about this before. His take on it was the word pod comes across as, trying to be cool kid, like you're too old and you're trying to use this word that doesn't fit your generation, or you're just trying to abbreviate a thing that doesn't need to be abbreviated. And my stance, I had never really thought about this before. I don't have a strong stance one way or the other, but I was just thinking about it. I was like, well, pod is a good abbreviation because it's taking podcast, which is 2 syllables, and it's turning it into just a singular syllable. So that does seem like an appropriate abbreviation, but I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I'm just a boomer and I don't even realize it, and I'm saying things that are cringe. Anyways, all that, put that aside, but let me know. Do you think it's cringe or not? Let me know in the comments. Shoot me a review, whatever. Shoot me a DM. Let me know. Like, am I being cringe when I say welcome to the pod? I'll stop, or I won't. I don't know. Maybe I'm just a cringy dude. Anyway, today I want to talk about a lesson that I just relearned again this last week. And so if I'm having to relearn it, then chances are it might serve you as well. It's that we spend a lot of time putting time, energy and focus into things that aren't necessarily problems, or no, they are the problems. But by putting our time and our focus and energy into solving problems, we're taking that time and energy and focus away from leaning into the opportunities in our life, which could have more outsized growth. And so what I mean by this is, back when we were building escape climbing, something that I noticed was that we would put our best people consistently on solving problems. So if we had some kind of shipping issue, we had some kind of manufacturing issue, we would consistently pull our best people to go and try and solve that problem. And what we were doing is, instead of putting them on our best opportunities, things that could potentially, 10x, 100x our business, we're putting them on just kind of like stop the bleeding in certain areas. And so all their time was just put into like problem maintenance mode, like putting out fires all the time, rather than thinking about like what's the next evolution, the growth opportunity, the thing that's sitting right in front of us that's like the most important thing. And when we started to realize that, we're like, okay, we need to use our people a little bit better and not just have our best people putting out fires all the time. That's not really the highest and best use for them. And so we started implementing something called the opportunity meeting, once a week, once a month, depending on like the cadence, where we just get together and say, okay, in this meeting, instead of focusing on all the things that are going wrong, because it's the things that go wrong that tend to dominate the meetings, let's come into this meeting and only ask ourselves, what are the opportunities that are right in front of us that we're not even seeing right now? And that gets the creative juices flowing, gets you thinking, more optimistically about like what we could be doing to continue growing or continue moving forward, continue improving, rather than focusing on the negative. And I found that to be very, very powerful. Now, if you're not careful, if you don't make this an intentional process, then you will just slip into always putting out fires and doing the things that are urgent, but not necessarily important. We've talked about the Eisenhower matrix before, how you can graph things out based off of urgency and importance, and that we should always be prioritizing things that are both, things that are urgent and important, they automatically get prioritized. But typically the things that are urgent but not necessarily important, those tend to get done more frequently than the things which are important but not urgent. And it's important that, it's critical that things that are important are never at the mercy of things which are merely urgent. Okay, so let's say that again. It's critical that the things which are important are never at the mercy of things that are merely urgent. And I found myself doing this. As I was reflecting, I was like kind of vision casting what 2024 looks like from my businesses, from the content creation side. What I realized was that I have been putting a ton of time and energy focusing into the wrong things when it comes to the content production side of things. In particular, this podcast is a really great example of this. This is a daily podcast every single day. I sit down, or once a week, I sit down and I batch these. And I just do a quick 5 to 10 minute podcast, try to bring a little bit of value to guys, low production and low effort in the grand scheme of things. Just kind of talking off the top of my head, kind of and seeing what resonates with you guys, and then taking that content and going deeper on the main channel or into the newsletter. And what I found is that I've yet to miss a single day of this podcast. But because this podcast is urgent, I prioritize it over the other forms of content, which are actually more important to my brand, to my businesses, specifically the newsletter and the main YouTube channel. And when I think about like what drives the most growth and what brings the most value to the most people, one video on the main YouTube channel can bring in 1 million views. Whereas this podcast, it gets good good listenership, good viewage, but it only on YouTube might get a couple hundred views if it does really great, maybe 1,000 if it does fantastic. And in the grand scheme of things, when you look at which has more impact, it's undeniable that the main channel has that. But because it's not as critical, because I never put like any kind of timestamp and saying I'm going to release content every single week on the main channel, it's been more of a, hey, we're going to put the time and energy into creating the great content, and when it's ready, and we'll put it out. Because of that, I've continually pushed it, and not prioritized it, and I've let the podcast take preeminence. And as a result, I was just looking back and realized I hadn't really posted a video on the main channel in the last month. And so I've fallen into this trap of focusing on the urgent, not necessarily the important. I've been solving problems instead of leaning into the winners. And part of that is like perfectionism. When you have a thing that's working, when it's in like the main YouTube channel is a great example of this. It's very high production value. We put a lot of time and energy into it, and it takes me 5-6 hours just to write the script for those videos because I put a lot of intention into it. That's a huge investment of time, and I want it to be a certain quality. And if it doesn't do as well, it is it's hard. It's harder than if you just don't put as much time and energy into it. And so I find myself resistant to really doing that work when I could just take the easier route and go record some podcasts. And so I share this with you because I'm sure there's things in your life where you're already seeing success and there's movement in the right direction, but because maybe now you're falling into like the perfectionism trap, or because it's not urgent, you're deprioritizing the thing that's already successful. And so I encourage you, think about, okay, where is my time and energy actually best spent? What do I need to be prioritizing? And for me, going into 2024, my goal is to release a weekly video on the high quality main YouTube channel. That is going to be a very, very high standard. It's going to be very tough to hit given how much writing it takes me, how much energy it takes out of me, but I'm committed to that. And I'm excited to see what we can do with that content next year. So stay tuned. Anywho, that's going to do it for me, guys and gals. Appreciate you being here. We'll catch you in the next episode. Until then, stay hyper focused, my friends.